You open your banking app on payday. You see the deposit hit. For about 5 seconds, you feel rich. Then you start doing the math in your head. Rent, car payment, minimums on the credit cards, groceries, gas, that one subscription you swear you canceled, but it's still there. And before the month has even started, your brain quietly goes, yeah, this money's already gone. So you close the app, you tell yourself, once I start making real money, then I'll actually save. Then I'll invest. Then I'll get serious about building wealth. But right now, you feel like you're starting from zero every single month. If that sounds uncomfortably familiar, this video is for you. My name is Smart, and I spend way too much time thinking about how money actually works in real life, not just in theory. If you're someone who feels like you're always starting from zero with money, living paycheck to paycheck, juggling bills, and wondering how anyone ever gets ahead, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because today, we're talking about something I call the $0 rule. How people with nothing still manage to build wealth, and more importantly, why so many people who do make good money never do. Here's the thing. Most people walk around with this sentence in their head. You need money to make money. And on the surface, it sounds true, right? Investing takes money. Starting a business takes money. Even having an emergency fund takes money. So if you're sitting there with $37 in your account, you think, well, I guess I'm stuck until I somehow start making way more. Look, I get it, but that belief is one of the biggest reasons people stay broke, even as their income goes up. Because here's what most people don't realize. Money isn't the starting point of wealth. Behavior is. There's a study from the National Bureau of Economic Research that looked at who actually becomes wealthy over their lifetime. Income, how much you make, explained less than 30% of the difference. That means over 70% of wealth outcomes were explained by things like habits, decisions, and psychology, not salary. You see this in extreme examples all the time. Sports Illustrated reported that about 78% of NFL players face serious financial stress or bankruptcy within a few years of retirement. Multiple analyses of lottery winners show that roughly 70% of them are broke again within 5 years. These people didn't start at zero. They started with millions and still lost it. So clearly, just having money isn't the solution. The real question is, why do some people go from nothing to wealthy, while others go from wealthy to nothing? This is where it gets really interesting. The people who climb from nothing to financial security almost always follow a pattern. They obey what I call the $0 rule. If you can't build wealth behaviors with $0, you won't build wealth with $10,000. In other words, if you can't control money when it's small, money will control you when it's big. And I know that sounds a little harsh, but stay with me, because this is actually good news. It means you don't have to wait until you're rich to start acting like someone who is going to be rich. You can practice all the important parts of wealth building even when there's basically nothing in your account. Think about it like going to the gym. You don't walk in on day one, load 300 pounds on the bar, and say, once I can magically lift this, then I'll start training. That's insane. You start with whatever you can handle. You practice the movement with light weight. Your body learns the pattern first. Then the strength shows up. Money works the same way. You practice planning. You practice saying no to certain purchases. You practice delaying gratification. You practice tracking what you're doing, with tiny amounts when the stakes are low. Then, as the amounts get bigger, the behaviors are already automatic. The $0 rule says don't wait for money to show up before you act wealthy. Act wealthy first, and the money has somewhere to go when it arrives. Now we have to talk about what's actually going on in your brain when you feel broke. Because if you've ever thought, I know what I should do, but I just don't do it, you're not crazy. There's real psychology behind that. Researchers at Princeton and Harvard did a series of experiments on what they call scarcity mindset, this constant feeling of not enough, especially around money. They found that when people were under financial stress, their effective IQ dropped by up to 13 points. That's like trying to manage your money after pulling an all-nighter every single day. You start tunnel visioning on the immediate problem. How do I get through this week? How do I pay this one bill? How do I feel better right now? Long-term thinking gets pushed to the back. So you end up doing things like grabbing takeout because your brain is too fried to cook, buying something small because you deserve it after a hard week, or saying, I'll start saving when I earn more, even though you've said that for years. Short term, those choices give you relief.
Long term, they keep you stuck. Here's what most people don't realize. Scarcity doesn't just reflect your situation, it shapes your decisions. And unless you deliberately interrupt that pattern, more income just gives you more room to make the same bad decisions. That's why so many people double their income and still feel broke. Let me make this really concrete. Imagine two people, same age, same job, same income. Let's say they both take home $2,500 a month after taxes. They both feel like they're starting from zero. Person A says what most people say. There's nothing left to save. When I make more, then I'll start. So they don't track anything. Money goes in, money goes out. They upgrade a few things as they go because, hey, life is hard and they deserve it. Over time, they're grabbing $7 coffees a few times a week, $12 to $20 food deliveries when they're tired, random Amazon stuff, streaming services they forgot about. None of it feels big in the moment. Whatever, it's just $15. But quietly, that adds up to, say, $10 a day of mindless spending. That's $300 a month. That's $3,600 a year. And they don't notice because they're not looking. Person B does something different. They say, okay, I might not be able to save much yet, but I can control my behavior. They follow the $0 rule. First, they track every dollar for a month. No judgment, just data. They notice that $10 a day leak not in big purchases, but in 1,000 tiny ones. So they create a simple rule for themselves. Any non-essential purchase over $10 gets a 24-hour pause. They pick one or two categories to cut back on, maybe delivery and impulse Amazon pies. They keep everything else the same. By doing that, they plug just half of that leak. They free up $150 a month. And here's the key. At first, they're not even trying to get rich. They're just proving to themselves that they can control something. Now let's roll the tape forward. 5 years later, person A, the I'll start later person, has zero real savings, some random purchases they barely remember, and the same sense of stress every payday. Person B has been freeing up $150 a month and putting it towards something intentional. If they just stuck it in a boring savings account for 5 years, they'd have roughly $9,000 plus a little interest. Not life-changing money, but enough to survive a job loss, move to a better-paying city, invest in a course or certification, or start a small side business. That optionality is the beginning of wealth. Same income, same starting point at zero, completely different outcome because one of them obeyed the $0 rule.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, smart, but $150 a month is nothing. That's not going to make me rich. You're right. By itself, it won't. But you're missing the point. The money amount is not the main thing happening. The main thing is that you're changing your identity. Person A is rehearsing the identity of, I can't save. My situation is the problem. Person B is rehearsing the identity of, I control where my money goes, even when it's small. And here's what most people don't realize. Habits scale. Identity scales. If you can protect $5 a day or $50 a month or even just $10 every paycheck, your brain is learning, I am someone who plans. I am someone who tells my money what to do. Later, when you're making an extra $500 a month or $2,000 a month, those same behaviors kick in automatically. Let me show you the math on just $5 a day, because this blows people's minds. Say you find a way, through tracking and a pause rule, to avoid $5 of unnecessary spending per day. That's $5 times 365 days, which is $1,825 per year. If you invest that $1,825 per year into a simple stock market index fund earning 8% on average, here's what happens. After 10 years, you're somewhere around $26,000. After 20 years, roughly $89,000. After 30 years, around $225,000. That's one tiny habit from one $5 decision you repeat 365 times a year. Now imagine stacking 2 or 3 of those. This is where it gets really interesting. You didn't suddenly become rich because you found $5. You became rich because you learned to respect $5. People who get rich from nothing are ridiculous about small amounts early on, not because they're cheap, but because they're training. So let's get super practical. What does the $0 rule actually look like in your life right now, even if you're broke? I want to give you 5 steps you can start immediately. Step 1, track every dollar for 30 days. Look, I know tracking sounds boring. Most people skip it because it feels pointless when there's not much money to track. But remember the study I mentioned. The Journal of Consumer Research found that people who simply tracked their spending without even trying to cut anything naturally spend 15 to 20% less in about 2 months. Why? Because awareness creates friction. When you see the $7 coffee, the $18 delivery, the $9 subscription, your brain goes, wait, do I actually want this? For the next 30 days, write down everything. Use an app, a spreadsheet, a notebook, whatever. Every coffee, every bill, every $3 snack. Just track. This is your X-ray of what's going on. Step 2, create a survival number and a reality number. You're going to figure out 2 numbers. First, your survival number, the absolute minimum you need each month to keep a roof over your head, lights on, and food in your body. That's rent, utilities, basic groceries, minimum debt payments, a cheap phone plan, and transportation. Second, your reality number, what you're actually spending. Let's say your take-home pay is $2,500. Your survival number is $1,800. Your reality number is $2,450. That means your lifestyle is eating almost everything, and you have, technically, about $700 of flex between survival and reality. Now, I'm not saying you should live at survival level. That's miserable. But the point of the $0 rule is to see that you have some room to practice discipline even if it's tiny. Step 3, install a $0 pause rule. Here's a rule I want you to try. For the next 30 days, no non-essential purchase over $20 happens instantly. You have to wait 24 hours. You can still buy it after 24 hours if you really want it, but you can't tap buy now in the moment. This one rule does 3 things. First, it kills impulse buys. Second, it separates emotion from decision. Third, it teaches your brain, I don't have to react to every urge. You are literally training self-control, which is the muscle behind every wealth behavior. Step 4, build a micro buffer. Let's say after tracking, you find $50 to $100 a month you can redirect by cutting a few things you genuinely don't care about. Here's what you do with it. Your first goal is a micro emergency fund, somewhere between $500 and $1,000. This is not financial freedom. This is I don't get wrecked by one flat tire or one unexpected bill. Even if it's $20 per paycheck, you treat that transfer like a bill you must pay. This is you proving to yourself, I could move money on purpose, even when it's small. Step 5, invest in knowledge before you invest big money. Once you've built a tiny buffer and you've proven you can control $50 a month, start investing in knowledge. I don't mean buying $2,000 courses from gurus. I mean reading one good personal finance book from the library, watching reputable videos on index funds, taxes and benefits, and understanding your 401k match, your HSA, your Roth IRA, whatever applies where you live. The return on understanding is insane. If you use that knowledge to grab your full 401k match, which is literally free money, stop paying dumb bank fees, or choose a low-fee index fund instead of a 1.5% expense ratio mutual fund, you can increase your lifetime net worth by hundreds of thousands of dollars off information alone. And you can start learning when your net worth is 0.
Now, you might be thinking, Smart, this all sounds great, but I legit have nothing. I'm behind on bills, I'm in overdraft, this doesn't apply to me. First, I'm not going to pretend that tracking and pausing purchases magically fixes deep structural problems like huge medical debt or poverty-level wages. Sometimes the main move really is earn more as fast as humanly possible. But here's the uncomfortable truth.
If you're in a really tight spot and you have zero idea where your money is going, you're trying to solve a problem blindfolded. The $0 rule doesn't say you must save $500 a month right now. It says whatever your situation is, practice some version of wealth behavior with whatever you have. That might mean tracking, even if every line item is a bill I'm behind on. It might mean calling creditors and negotiating payment plans instead of ignoring them. It might mean finding $5 a week for a mini buffer so you stop paying $35 overdraft fees. I've seen people who couldn't save suddenly free up $60 a month just by canceling 3 subscriptions they forgot about, switching to a cheaper phone plan, and actually cooking half their meals instead of ordering in. Is that going to make them millionaires this year? No, but they just clawed back $720 a year and proved to themselves they're not completely powerless. That psychological shift is huge. Because once your brain goes from I'm doomed to I have levers I can pull, you start seeing more opportunities. An extra shift, a side gig, a higher paying job in the same field, a certification that bumps your income. And here's where the $0 rule pays off. As your income increases, your habits are already in place. So instead of your lifestyle exploding with every raise, you now have room to increase your buffer faster, start investing a small amount each month, and pay down high-interest debt aggressively. Remember, you don't become wealthy by earning more. You become wealthy by keeping control when you do. Let me give you one more story, because I've seen this play out in real life. 2 teachers, same school, same salary. We'll call them Jess and Mike. Both start out broke. Both start at about $42,000 a year. Jess finds out about basic personal finance early. She doesn't do anything crazy. She just tracks her spending, keeps her car paid off instead of upgrading, contributes 5% to her retirement plan to get the full employer match, and avoids high-interest consumer debt. On take-home pay of roughly $2,600 a month, she manages to consistently save and invest around $150 to $200 a month. Mike does what most people do. He tells himself he'll start saving later. He upgrades his car with a payment, eats out a bit more, accumulates some credit card debt, but always pays just enough to get by. Fast forward 10 years. Jess has a retirement account worth around $35,000 to $40,000 thanks to contributions and growth, an emergency fund, and no high-interest debt. Mike has a small retirement balance he started last year, a few thousand in credit card debt, and a car that's worth less than what he owes on it. Same career, same income path. The difference is that Jess followed the $0 rule from the beginning. She behaved like someone who would be wealthy even when she wasn't. That's the power you have, even at zero. So let's bring this home. The $0 rule is not some magical secret the rich are hiding. It's brutally simple. If you can't build wealth behaviors with $0, you won't suddenly build them with $10,000. We covered a lot, so here's your 30-day challenge. First, track every dollar that leaves your life for 30 days. No judgment, just awareness. Second, calculate your survival number and your reality number. See the gap. Third, install a 24-hour pause rule on non-essential purchases over $20. Fourth, free up any amount, even $10 to $50 a month, and send it to a micro buffer. Treat it like a bill. Fifth, use some of your time, not your money, to learn. Watch solid finance videos, read one good book, understand your benefits. If you do that, after 30 days, you might not be rich, but you will not be the same person. You'll be someone who knows where their money goes, can say no to themselves for 24 hours, has the beginning of a safety net, and actually understands a little more about how money works. That identity, disciplined with small amounts, is the foundation of everything that comes next. Look, I know it's easy to feel behind. Social media makes it look like everyone your age is buying houses, driving nice cars, and retiring at 32. But wealth isn't about where you start, it's about whether you start at all. And if you're at zero right now, the $0 rule is your blueprint. Start acting like the kind of person who can handle wealth before the wealth shows up. Because when it does, and it will if you keep stacking skills, income, and good decisions, your future self will be very grateful you started practicing when the numbers were small.
If this video helped you see money a little differently, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who feels stuck financially. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's one habit you're going to start this month at 0? Remember, you don't need money to start building wealth. You need habits, awareness, and discipline. Money just amplifies who you already are. I'll see you in the next one.